The anti-immigrant authoritarians are at it again, this time in Arizona, where they're going to ramp up border enforcement to the detriment of your constitutional rights. Provisions of the bill that is up for vote in the Arizona legislature include that a new state misdemeanor crime would exist for failing to carry alien registration documents, and it would permit officers to arrest immigrants who could not show documents proving their legal residence. This, of course, smacks of a complete turning of innocence until proven guilty upon its head by mandating that if you are to be in this country, you must carry your papers at all times. It's completely absurd, and it will clearly be applied in a racist manner, because those they suspect will be immigrants will be those who look Latino. So it's just giving another excuse for the already racially biased police forces to oppress more people, as if they needed another excuse. This is the state that has fucking Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Next provision, it would allow people to sue if they feel a government agency has adopted a policy that hinders immigration enforcement. So, in other words, it would mean that if the government, decides to actually act on the Bill of Rights, or to provide services in an equal manner, including to undocumented immigrants, citizens could sue to remove these policies. This seems to me to be completely abhorrent. It means that the state will serve purely as a tool of racism, of bigotry, and of nativism. It already serves as too much of a tool for those vile ideals. Next, the bill would prohibit people from blocking traffic when they seek or offer day labor services on street corners. Superficially, this may seem reasonable. However, laws that prohibit the blocking of traffic are already in existence. So why is this law needed? Simply to crack down on illegal immigrants, to crack down on those who are deemed the other. All it will do is cut down on association rights, because people who are attempting to use, say, street corners to engage in commerce, people who happen to, in all probability, look Latino, are going to be taken out by police for their crimes of voluntary association. Next, it would make it illegal for people to knowingly transport illegal immigrants. This shows that the anti-immigrant hysteria infringes not just on the rights of immigrants, but on the rights of people like me and you, and everyone in this country. So, why do they want to do this? The given justification is crime. For instance, the murder of a rancher. There's Robert Krentz, a 58-year-old rancher. He was murdered by someone who was allegedly a Mexican illegal immigrant. And then Pinal County Sheriff Paul Babu, I apologize if I butchered his name, stated that we've had numerous officers that have been killed by illegal immigrants in Arizona. However, when Steve Chapman of Reason magazine called his office to get a list of the police who had been killed by illegal immigrants, it turned out there had only been one since the beginning of 2008. This is hardly a trend. What happens if we take off our love of anecdotal evidence in politics and look at the actual data that surrounds this issue? Well, we find that all the social sciences, all the numbers, suggest that illegal immigrants commit less crime, not more. For instance, in 2007, economists Kristen F. Butcher and Ann Morrison Peel published a paper in the National Bureau of Economic Research's journal that analyzed why incarceration rates for undocumented immigrants are so low. They wrote in their explanation and introduction to the paper, the perception that immigration adversely affects crime rates led to legislation in the 1990s that particularly increased punishment of criminal aliens. In fact, immigrants have much lower institutionalization or incarceration rates than the native born, on the order of 1/5 the rate of natives. More recently arrived immigrants have the lowest relative incarceration rates, and this difference increased from 1980 to 2000. We examined whether the improvement in immigrants' relative incarceration rates over the last 3 decades is linked to increased deportation, immigrant self-selection, or deterrence. Our evidence suggests that deportation does not drive the results. Rather, the process of migration selects individuals who either have lower criminal propensities or are more responsive to deterrent effects than the average native. Immigrants who are already in the country reduce their relative institutionalization probability over the decades, and the newly arrived immigrants in the 1980s and 1990s seem to be particularly unlikely to be involved in criminal activity, consistent with increasingly positive selection along this dimension. They're not the only researchers who have noted this trend toward lower crime rates on the part of immigrants. Harvard sociologist Robert Sampson focused his research on Chicago neighborhoods, and he documented that criminal behavior was much less common among Mexican Americans, who constitute the biggest share of Latinos, than among whites. I will have several links in the sidebar to articles which prove my point on this matter, but I've already cited several scholars who note this correlation. What's causing the existing crime, particularly the existing violent crime? The war on drugs. As Darian Warden of the Center for a Stateless Society points out in his excellent article, Escalating the War on Freedom, the economy of the he states, the economy in which the Mexican drug trade operates is populated mainly by violent gangs. So there is little recourse between gang members besides violence and little protection besides what a gang can offer. So violence is encouraged by the massive profits that can only be had by those who fight off rival gangs, including governments. American bars and breweries offer safer products and ceased having shootouts when alcohol was re-legalized. We should expect little difference when marijuana and cocaine are re-legalized. The state is effectively creating our violent crime problems. Not only do police have free rein to engage in violence, not only do SWAT teams raid people's homes and kill innocent civilians, but organized crime is a result of perverse incentives. It is a result of the state artificially creating a violent black market. But of course, they're not going to deal with this. For as Darian Warden points out, government is incentivized to not examine root problems. The security industrial complex is big business, and drug arrests make up a big part of that business. An authoritarian culture indoctrinates people with the belief that it is sinful to do what is illegal, as if laws were passed with virtuous intentions by virtuous people. If you are worried about the welfare state not being able to support the mythical menace of illegal aliens, then abolish the welfare state from below with mutual aid arrangements and solidarity with tax dollars. Those who govern cause suffering and strife. The solutions they propose to the problems they create are often more restrictions and more enforcement. He is exactly right. The government has created a problem of crime in this country. This is not to say that violent crime would not occur in the absence of drug prohibition, but it is certainly exacerbated by their prohibitionism. But a solution, or at least a mitigating factor, has occurred. Illegal immigration. Illegal immigrants are less likely, not more likely, to engage in violent crime. However, when a massive, major violent crime occurs, a tragic event that sticks in the public's consciousness, the people demand blood. They say, there ought to be a law. There ought to be a law. How does one respond to this hysteria? Well, if the public was well-read, if they bothered to research what causes criminal trends, they would respond by dealing with the root causes. But instead, they simply create a bogeyman. They note that the criminal was an illegal immigrant, and they use it as an excuse to expand the authority of the state, to further erode your already weakened 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights, to further expand the power that the armed agents of the state have over you, to further expand racial inequity in this country, to further expand hostilities and privations. Data is their enemy. Reality is the enemy of political demagogues. Stop the creation of bogeymans. Stop the racism. Stop the authoritarianism. Spread the facts, spread an empirical awareness of what's true about crime.